Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Alder Hour. It's midday on the West Coast and it's 7 p.m. here in the UK. And this is your favorite way to end your work day. I'm Matt Alder, and we're back from Transform. So, last week, if you were watching, we did a live show from the Transform conference in Las Vegas. We were competing with St. Patrick's Day bagpipes, an excitable drinks reception. Someone tried to clean the camera off the table in the middle. It was great fun, and you can catch up with that on the YouTube channel and on our LinkedIn profiles. This show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. You can head over to purpleacornnetwork.com after the show, of course, because you need to stay here and watch the show for now. If you want to learn more, you can follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. And this episode is also available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Now, we're live, and we're really hoping that those of you who are watching are going to join in and make some comments. If you make some comments, we'll put them on the screen and we'll try and interact with you. But really, live show really wants to get your opinions on some of the stuff that we're talking about. And this week we have just got so much stuff to discuss. So much stuff. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my two co-hosts for this week. Here they come. Now, unfortunately, Rhona is sick this week, or not sick. She's lost her voice. And when I spoke to her during Transform last week, I think it was on halfway through day 2, she'd done something like 30 podcast interviews. So I'm not surprised she's lost her voice. So she's having a well-deserved rest. However, Jocelyn is here. Hi, Jocelyn. How are you doing?
Hi, doing pretty well, thank you. Finally getting over the jet lag, but I can't imagine how it's been for you, Matt.
Yeah, no one's allowed to talk about jet lag unless they flew more than 10 hours home. I didn't get any jet lag going out, but actually coming back, I think I'm literally only just over it today. What was the kind of highlight of Transform for you, other than doing our live show, obviously?
Of course, yes. I think the highlight was really first getting to see people who I mostly only get to see during conferences. They're wonderful people in the HR and HR tech space. And so it's just so great spending time with them. But also just the people in general. This is a much more progressive crowd. There are some really interesting kind of higher level thought leadership discussions that you come across while you're there. And so I really enjoyed that.
Fantastic. And standing in for Rhona, we have Robin returning to the show this week. Hi, Robin. How you doing?
I am good. Hello, Matt, Jocelyn. So great to be here. Sadly, because Rhona can't speak, but
Absolutely, under sad circumstances, but we're very happy to see you. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Smart Recruiters for inviting me to their poker tournament while we were at Transform, which I'd never done before, and I was frankly terrified. But actually, it was very, very friendly. Everyone enjoyed it, and I didn't finish last, so that was a big achievement as far as I was concerned. So this week, Jocelyn, what do you have for us coming up?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when you get demoted and are then asked to interview your replacement, which is a position to be in.
That's quite some situation to be in. And Robin, you and me are going to talk about VR in the workplace.
Yes, we are.
Yes, which should be really interesting. I've got a few views on that. Do you have do you have kind of like very clear views on VR in the workplace? We'll find out later. But.
Yes, I think yours are perhaps a little more pointed than mine, but I certainly have my my hot takes.
Fantastic. So, well, let's get straight into points and pints. Now, this is the section of the show, if you've not watched before, where I open a beer as a non-alcoholic beer again this week. And it's I've had this one on the show before, actually. It's Northern Monk Holy Faith, made in the north of England, and it's very nice. I'll open that in a second. And so I'm going to drink that, and we're going to talk about two stories that are in the headlines this week, and they are both worthy of lots of comments. So I'm going to try and I think this is going to spray everywhere, so I'm going to open it this way. Oh, it was fine. That's all right. That's good. and then I shall pour it into my non-pint glass. Should be called half pints, and non-alcoholic half pints and points doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
No, not quite as sexy.
No. Does someone else have a drink, or is it just me? Just me this week?
Again, it's still, I still got quite a bit of work day going, so I've got my Diet Orange Sunkist. So
perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
I'm still on coffee. Just
Coffee.
to be
There's
totally
nothing wrong
honest.
with coffee. There's nothing wrong with coffee. Right. Let's move. So let's move on. I know you're both dying to talk about this. So let's move on to the first headline, which is the what's the deal with corporate espionage? Espionage, basically. So Rippling versus Deal. This has been everywhere on podcasts all over LinkedIn. It's kind of been the talk of the last week. Basically, the Rippling. I think I've got this the right way around. Rippling is accusing Deal. And obviously they're competing companies with similar offerings. They're accusing Deal of corporate espionage. They're saying that that Deal put someone into their put an employee into their company who was passing information over to Deal. So just to quote from the article, the mole searched for Deal in Rippling systems 23 times a day on average over a 4-month period, and was able to access details about its sales pipeline, where it was competing with Deal, the lawsuit alleges. Among the files the alleged spy downloaded were a slide deck known as Competitive Intelligence Card, where Rippling outlines its strategy to compete for Deal's customers. They're also able to access a churn risk list, where Rippling identified customers that were considering leaving. To me, the most interesting bit of this was at Transform last week, Rippling and Deal had stands right next to each other, which was probably slightly awkward because this was breaking
as they were setting up. Yeah.
Yeah, literally as they were setting up. I mean, I've got a lot to say, but I want to hand it over to you two to get your thoughts first. I mean, all I'll say at this point is it's not really a good look for either of them, is it? Two companies who handle confidential data, going out there publicly. One is accusing one's accusing someone of spying, but also of losing that data. So not a very good look. Who wants to start? Jocelyn, do you want to start? I know you're dying to talk about this.
Sure. Yeah. So there's obviously been a lot of humor around this too, which I think we kind of need at times. I think it was Rippling. I'm assuming they produced this because their CEO is in it, unless they put a fake CEO in there. I don't know what he looks like. But it was just this hilarious video about DS, the Deal spy, in this James Bond outfit with James Bond music and, the whole deal. And it was, no pun, and it was just so funny to watch. And I think that at the very least, considering the fact that it doesn't look good for either company, to at least inject some humor into it makes it a little bit better. But, this story is absolutely wild, right? I think the average person who's not in HR tech is going to say HR tech is fairly boring, but this is amazing, right? So we've got, as you mentioned, this deal, this Rippling employee, which I think might have always been a Rippling employee and then just kind of converted over to Deal at some point.
was converted to the Deal side.
Yes, I think he'd been
in some
there
kind
for
of
a bit of time.
shady. They were based in Dublin, some shady Dublin bar or something.
Yeah.
But sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, like Vespa martinis, the whole deal. And so this person, was doing tons of searches, as you mentioned, through Slack over at Rippling, and then supposedly sending the information back over to Deal. But what was really interesting was the honeypot trap that Rippling had set for Deal. So basically, for those of you who don't know, once Rippling noticed that there were all these searches going on and information kind of being gathered, et cetera, according to them, they sent a letter to the general counsel and two other folks, I forget, maybe the CEO and someone else, I can't remember, over at Deal saying, hey, we found this defectors channel on Slack at Rippling. It kind of talks crap about Deal. Just wanted to make you aware. I'm pretty sure that that's the message that was sent over, but I read a few verticals, and they're all a little bit different. And so within 24 hours of sending those letters over, they were able to identify that this deal spy was in fact searching for this defectors channel on Slack, which would imply that one of those three individuals at a very high level at Deal was in direct communication or knew about this individual and their position and the services that they were offering to Deal.
Wow.
So then I think this was in Ireland or the UK. I can't remember. I'm a little spotty with my facts here, but they're just so amazing.
It was in Dublin.
It was okay. Yeah. So the solicitor came to the Dublin Rippling office to find this individual and confiscate his phone. And he literally ran into the bathroom and locked himself into the bathroom and tried to flush the cell phone down the toilet, which is insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
that is insane. I can't wait for the Netflix series of this.
Oh my God.
It should be amazing. Robert, what's your take on all of this?
It all I could think as the story was unfolding, especially when they got to the honeypot, piece of the story was, I'm going to have lots of pop culture references today. So another, all I could think of was the television show The Americans, which I just loved. And I'm, picturing Kerry Russell running around, working at Deal and Rippling. The thing that made me, first off, one of the places I went to first was, because I think probably all of us know folks that work and or have worked at one or other or both of these organizations. Some folks who are still there. I specifically thought of somebody I know at Deal, and I thought, oh, how horrible to be caught up in this as just an employee. The conversations that they must have to be having with their clients, and think of the sales teams. I mean, this is impacting people day-to-day, work lives.
Yeah.
So my mind went to that. And I think just the, however this shakes out, if these things seem to be, turn out to be true, what it underscores is just this, wow, intense competition. These shady tactics, potentially being used, extraordinarily aggressive, shady tactics, potentially being used, in, to Jocelyn's point, this very sort of unsexy industry. But, just, it's frightening, really, to think about. These are companies that, we're part of an industry that, make a great case to clients or potential clients and customers about privacy.
Exactly that. And I mean, I find it bizarre because everyone knows that your digital footprint, particularly at work, can be tracked and your searches can be tracked. So it's like, what is the story here? It doesn't say, it's not particularly a sophisticated attempt, is it? I mean, Jocelyn, any final thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, here, the really big thing that we need to be considering is insider threat programs.
Yeah.
And cybersecurity software for organizations, especially organizations that are carrying such sensitive data, right? I mean, there's tons of software out there that can scan through abnormal activity and, kind of bring it to surface. The problem is often, especially for a larger company, those activities can be in such high volume that their IT teams simply can't keep up with it all. So what do you do? These softwares are going to have to prioritize in some way the threat. AI can certainly help with that. Insider threat, generally is not going to sit under HR. It's something that's going to sit under IT or information security, cybersecurity. And so that's something that the organization as a whole is going to have to take a look at very seriously. And HR can get involved by talking about employer brand and really kind of appealing to the rest of the organizational leadership on what type of support cybersecurity teams need in order to identify and attack situations like this.
Yeah, I think there's some really good points there, and it's
Mm.
part of this is very funny, part of it is incredibly serious with incredibly serious implications. So, certainly makes it my HR story of the year so far.
Yeah. So
Um, so far, it is only the end of March after all, and I'm sure someone might outdo it with something else. But let's move on to the next headline, which is very similar, equally potentially amusing and very serious. So this is out of the UK, and I'm interested to know whether anything like this would ever happen in the US. So you can sort of answer that for me in a second. So basically, what happened was this happened in an estate agent, so a realtor, people who sell property, and someone basically took their employer to an industrial tribunal and won because they moved them to a desk that they didn't want to sit at. So, a little bit of context, just a quote from the article. In this case, an estate agent with 8 years of service successfully claimed constructive dismissal after being asked to sit at a different desk upon his return to the branch, a move he perceived as demotion, and the tribunal agreed. So, in some ways, this seems completely ridiculous. In other ways, I think there's some really interesting underlying issues here. I remember back when I used to run a team, the worst part of my job was when we used to move around the office quite a lot because the company was expanding. We were moving offices. And the worst part of my job was deciding where everyone would sit because it was very emotionally highly charged. And it wasn't necessarily because people thought they were being demoted, but certain people didn't want to sit next to other people and someone wanted to sit next to the window and all that kind of stuff. So I think, especially in the days when everyone was in the office all the time, where you sit can have a
Mhm.
big impact. And in some ways, it can turn adults into 6-year-olds in terms of the arguments that you see. But I think the status issue is interesting as well. I remember sitting on a train, three-hour train ride somewhere, and the guy across the aisle from me was on the phone, presumably to his boss, for at least an hour, just in a highly emotional state because he'd been given a worse mobile phone than one of the trainees. And it literally, I was just like, what a waste of energy. But obviously, to him, this was a clear indication that he wasn't as valued and he wasn't being, was he being demoted, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's interesting. And also, the flip side to this is organizations do this on purpose. There are, psychological tactics sometimes that employers or managers use to make people feel certain ways, to maybe we all heard the phrase of managing someone out of the workplace. And that's obviously what this person thought was happening.
Mhm.
And that doesn't just happen in overtly toxic workplaces. It can happen everywhere.
Mhm.
So yeah, lots wrapped up in here. What do you think, Robin? What do you think of this? Would this
Yeah,
happen? Would this happen in the US? Would
I
someone win a
no.
tribunal?
Well, it might happen in the U.S. I think more to the point of the managing someone out type of thing.
Yeah,
However, I don't think anyone would win in our an employment hearing or something is vastly different than a tribunal hearing, but I don't think anyone would necessarily win.
mm,
Quote, an employee would necessarily win. Um, but I find it fascinating because it certainly speaks to like the whole the concept, the idea of dominance hierarchies and whether you're looking at things through the lens of psychology or sociology or biology, even right, and this
mm,
tendency of humans and organisms to sort of fall into these ranked systems and
yeah,
or their
yeah,
perception of what that ranked system is, and this is in a nutshell that is playing out right here. It's status, it's authority, it's prestige, it's all of those things wrapped in there, and this employee um potentially recognizing what was a reality, which was it was a loss of prestige, loss of
yeah,
status. Um, again, I think in the U.S. that would be laughed out of the room.
yeah.
Um, but the guy was probably spot on with his
Yeah,
assessment of it.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like he probably was. Jocelyn, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Robin. I don't think this specific issue is something that would come up very often in the US. If anything, it might end up being the result of the culture that had been developed. Maybe you see it more in like a sales culture, for example, where
Mhm.
there's like actual
Mm,
rankings or something like
mm.
that. Um, and yes, I also agree that nobody would ever be successful in an unemployment hearing if they were to come and say, hey, well, it's because I wanted a better seat.
Yeah.
What I do see, though, especially in the tech world, is that there is certainly an attitude about, um, like this gentleman that you were talking about, not having a better phone or something like that.
Oh, the better
Mhm.
phone guy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. He was
There's
fascinating. He was fascinating to watch, definitely.
I could see that absolutely being something that comes up here. Oh, they have a better laptop. Theirs is newer. Mine isn't. I've been here longer. Why don't I get a newer laptop or I get a better phone or something like that? I think it has even actually less to do with status and more to do with simply feeling like some sort of entitlement to it
Mhm.
Mm,
because of
mm.
Mhm.
the value or contributions that you bring or your tenure, whatever it is. And so I think that actually is probably kind of similar to what we find here. But the second that I saw the title to this article, I thought, that's weird. That reminds me of my daughter in kindergarten being super upset that she was sitting next to Sally instead of Molly, and then going to the teacher and complaining about it.
Now, I
Yeah.
would I would like to point out though where I think it could be a serious issue potentially. So it's another one where we're kind of laughing it away because it's kind of funny.
Mm, mm.
But would not shock me to know that there aren't places that arise that exist where something like this could happen based on a protected characteristic of someone.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's
All the
a very
women
good
are
point.
going to go sit over here. All the
Very good
people
point.
from that ethnic group are going to go sit over here.
Mhm.
I've worked in organizations that were perilously close to that sort of mindset
Mm,
years
mm,
ago. So I could see that being a potential. And
mm.
in that case, if somebody was bringing a case of some kind, it would take a lot more research and whatnot behind that, but
Yeah, then
it would happen.
Yeah,
it
and
would
I
be
think,
valid.
like,
Yeah.
ADA could play a role in that as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
but those are really the only
Yeah,
outliers.
exactly.
Yeah, of course. So, again, another funny, serious,
Yeah,
in-depth kind of
yeah.
article. We could talk about these all day, but let's move on. Let's move on to the Situation Room. So, Jocelyn, you've been into the depths of Reddit again for us. What do you have? What do you have this time?
Yeah, I actually can't take any credit for it. It's the lovely producers of the show that find these great posts. But yeah, so this individual was working for a company remotely, and while his boss was out, had gotten promoted to assistant copy editor, I think it was, and new boss came in and decided to hire somebody who was actually local to that office since this individual was remote, and demoted this person to copy editor, and then brought somebody in the promotional role of assistant copy editor. And I might have these titles a little bit wrong, but that's the gist of it. And so his boss reached out to him and said, hey, we're going to have some candidates come in for final interviews that we would like all of you to meet. So sent this to the whole team. And so please be here on Wednesday or whatever date it was so that we can do these interviews. And so this individual says, like, I've never been in this situation before. What do I do? And I think that is a really unfair situation to put an
Mm,
employee in. And I would be really surprised if HR knew this was happening, but if they did, shame on them. You can't demote somebody and then have them interview the person that's taking over their job, especially through no fault of your own. And
mm,
so I think that for the employee, this individual really should speak up, talk to the manager, maybe talk to HR conversation doesn't go well with the manager, and just say, hey, I've been a high performer. I was promoted into the role because I was a high performer. I've now been demoted because I'm a remote employee and you want somebody in office. I mean, there wasn't even talk about whether or not there was an opportunity for this individual to come into the office or whether they were simply
Yeah,
demoted.
absolutely. Yeah.
That part was missing. And I just don't think it's appropriate for me to be coming in interviewing my replacement, essentially.
No, absolutely. I mean, is it even legal to demote someone in those circumstances, or do we just have not? We don't have enough information to tell.
Yeah, based on the information that was provided, no, there's nothing illegal about it.
Mm.
It just, you know,
Mm. Is
doesn't
it
look right.
is it another example of the psychological tactics we were just talking about in terms of making people uncomfortable so they leave potentially?
It absolutely could be. Yeah. It's just
Mm.
kind of, not performing somebody out, but in essence, treat them in such a way where they end up wanting to leave because this individual says in his post, I'm actively looking for another job. And I think anybody would be in that situation. So certainly that could be a tactic. I just couldn't understand why you would do that with a high performing individual simply because you want somebody in the office. That part makes no sense to me. So some
Yeah.
information in this story could certainly be missing.
No, absolutely. And just to flip this a little bit, because I've known circumstances where someone's been leaving a job for a positive reason. For example, they're taking a sabbatical, or they've been promoted, or they're just a very positive leaver, and they've been involved in the process to interview their replacement. So it's kind of a consensual positive thing. Is that good though? Is it good for someone to interview for their replacement under any circumstances?
I think so. Yes. I think that the person who's leaving, if it's all on good terms, is going to have a really good understanding of the culture, of what's required of the role, whether or not it's a good personality fit for the other team members, etc. And from personal experience, I've interviewed and hired my replacements as well. And that's made me feel like, you know what, I'm leaving the team behind with somebody who's really great, who I've trusted throughout this process, and I think they're going to be well taken care of. There's nobody who knows better what's required of the job and how to fit into the role than the person who's in it.
Mm,
If they're a good performer,
mm.
and so any organization should absolutely be taking advantage of somebody who's still in role who can do that for them.
And I've seen a sort of great bit of recruitment marketing where they got the person leaving the job to actually record a video job advert for the person who was starting. It's like, this is what you'll be doing. This is who you're working with. This is why I'm leaving. Which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a great resource for the candidate as well, because then they can ask some more candid questions about what to expect in the role, what challenges they might have, what's great about it, what's not. And if the individual is honest, then that gives that person the opportunity to also decide whether it's a good fit for them.
And sort of final question on this: how far do you think people should play the corporate game, even if it makes them uncomfortable? Where would you advise kind of drawing the line when it comes to this type of behavior?
When it comes to asking somebody to interview.
Yeah, or just things that people might feel uncomfortable with. They might feel that the company is kind of psychologically trying to pressure them. Is there kind of a line, or is it a personal choice, or should they just go to HR straight away?
Yeah, I think if you as an employee feel like you're being pushed out by your manager in some way, um, I think the respectful thing to do is to talk to your manager first and give them the benefit of the doubt, because it could be your own internal paranoia or
Mm.
anxiety, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not getting a satisfactory response or if the behavior is not changing, then absolutely go to HR. Going to HR at the very least sets some type of documented trail for yourself so that in the event that you were terminated for one reason or another or demoted for one reason or another, you have that paper trail that you can fall back on to say, hey, I've been going to HR and trying to have this resolved. The big thing is figuring out, why would you want to push me out? What's the
Mm.
situation? What can I perhaps fix or improve on? And, if there's just an impasse, then at that point, you can decide for yourself whether or not it's a culture that you still want to be a part of.
100%. Jocelyn, thank you so much. Let's move on to this week's guest. Hi, Summer. How are you doing?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well indeed. For people who might not know you, could you introduce yourself and tell us all what you do?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Matt, again, thank you for having me. My name is Summer Delaney. I am the founder and CEO of CollabWORK, which is the first community-powered hiring platform connecting companies to the hidden job market. So that means advertising in newsletters, Slack communities, Discord servers, Facebook groups, really those pockets of the internet where the best candidates are networking and discovering opportunities from sources that they trust. So excited to dive in further.
Fantastic. And I think the last time we spoke, I don't think you kind of been launched for very long, if I remember rightly. It's probably sort of a couple of years ago or something like that. How are things developed with the product and the business? How's it all been going?
I think you were the first podcast I was ever on was your podcast in the HR tech space. I was a former journalist, so it was good to kind of break in with you as my guide. Right when we won HR Tech's Pitch Fest for the best use of AI and
That's
HR
right.
Tech in 2023.
I
And
remember.
last week we actually won HR West Startup Showdown. So it's good that I keep needing to talk to you because wins seem to follow me whenever that we get to catch up.
Well, this is good news. I'm happy to be your lucky mascot. Now you've just released a really interesting white
Wow.
paper that goes into a lot of detail about this whole concept of community powered hiring. Got a few questions on it, but just go into a bit more detail for us to start with. The people who might not be 100% sort of familiar with this idea, what is it? How does it work? What kind of results do people get?
Yeah, so to give you a little bit background on kind of where CollabWORK came from, I actually spent most of my career as a journalist. So was Katie Couric's producer for many years at Yahoo News, was on air at Channel 11 in New York, WPIX TV, the CW affiliate. I worked at Amazon Studios doing product and News Corp doing partnership. And every one of those jobs I never got through applying cold online. I never got through a recruiter reaching out to me via LinkedIn or email. It was always through digital communities I was a part of. Really, my network was my net worth, right? That Katie Couric job was for a Google listserv for female journalists. That Channel 11 job was a Facebook group for people in production. That Amazon Studio job I got through a Slack community through Columbia Business School. And so really the idea, I use that example to kind of illustrate that there is this hidden job market of
Mm.
where candidates like myself are spending time and hanging out. Only 40% of candidates are actively seeking jobs. So if you're advertising on job boards or on places where, traditionally recruitment marketing advertising budget has gone towards, you're not reaching the vast majority of really qualified professionals that again are passive candidates, right? They're actively employed. They tend to be more targeted candidate profiles because a lot of these communities are based either on like an industry, so maybe it's a healthcare community or a tech community or a function, so maybe it's HR or legal. And often a lot of these communities also are more diverse. It's where
Mm.
professionals are trying to find safe spaces where they can talk to people like them, asking about salary transparency, company culture, etc. And so really the idea for community powered hiring is, let's shift that, especially since the pandemic with all these communities that have really grown over the past 5 years. Let's bring employer brands to those watering holes. Let's get that in front of these right candidates. It's really not about spraying and praying, but it's about posting with purpose, getting those jobs in front of that highly qualified folks. And so really as you alluded to, we published a white paper educating the market that, hey, you might not know that there are 700,000 plus professional Slack communities. Slack isn't just an internal employee tool. It's a place where people are
Mm.
hanging out. There is this hidden workforce. And the white paper was really an attempt for us to further educate practitioners and vendors about these trends and how they can access this talent pool at scale.
And to dig into the AI part of this for a second, as you say, you want to kind of want a competition for AI, and I know that's a big part of what you do. What is it? Is the AI identifying these communities? How is it? What sort of role is it playing? Because I'm kind of thinking back to when I first worked in recruitment marketing, which was a very long time ago. We used to try and do things like this, but it was very difficult to find the places, and getting the job content in there was quite hard as well. Is that what AI is doing the heavy lifting?
Yes. So how we're using AI is, first of all, we're very mindful of, AI bias laws, right? We want to make sure we're using AI ethically and legally. And so really how we're using it is to get smarter with our matches to our different community networks. So if you're an employer, if you're onboarding on the platform, we either can get your jobs directly through an ATS integration. We integrate with 40 plus applicant tracking systems, or XML feeds or API. We can really be flexible about how we're getting your jobs ingested in our database. Then our AI analyzes the jobs, again, at a high level based on, kind of those functions, those industries, location, seniority, if it's full-time, if it's fractional, lots of different ways to kind of analyze the jobs. And then initially it does a pass to our different communities, right? So say you're at a tech company, hiring a marketing role in New York City. It's going to ping all those relevant newsletters, Slack groups, Discord that, again, are tech focused, are marketing focused, are local, to really make sure that your job is matching with the different communities. The other way we're using AI is actually for our community partners to make sure that the jobs are really relevant for their audiences, that we're actually adding value to these spaces. The reason a lot of employers love to work with us is because we have these relationships with this hidden job market communities. And the reason a lot of communities like working with us is we add real value. A lot of times jobs are a currency shared. They don't like a lot of vendors in there, but they like that we are actually providing relevant curated roles for communities. And so we're using the AI over time to get smarter based on, going back to marketing. Let's say we had one marketing community that we're seeing a lot of more tech marketing roles, and another marketing community that we're getting a lot of click and apply data on more CPG marketing roles. They're going to start having very different jobs shared to their network that are really hyper relevant to that community.
In the white paper, you talk about community-powered hiring being this sort of sharp departure from traditional methods. From an employer perspective, what do they need to change about their thinking or their processes to make this work for them, or is it just kind of seamless as using I say seamless, but or is it like using a job board or something like that?
I think really, why a lot of employers really like working with us is it is about getting their open requisites in front of targeted talent pools, but it's also an employer branding play where most candidates are thinking about employers' reputation before they even consider applying to those roles. And so, we worked with a customer who was a large food and beverage distributor. And they came to us saying, we're really wanting to hire IT professionals in Seattle. How are we competing with Microsoft and Amazon, right? People don't necessarily think of us top of mind if they want to build their IT career. And so what was great about partnering with us is not only were we getting their jobs out there, but we were elevating their brand in front of IT professionals in the publications they read, in the Discords and Slacks they're networking in. There was an employer brand in play that also came into it, that they trust these communities. They trust the deal flow, if you will, of jobs going through there. And so we're seeing a lot of benefits, not just for kind of, I need to get a butt in the seat right now, but also let's elevate your brand. Let's attract candidates long-term, not just for that role, but for others down the line. And so I think, again, what we always say, it's not just about posting, but it's really about positioning, right? Of getting in front of this hyper-targeted group in that trusted, authentic way.
And to pick up on that trust and authenticity, because one of the issues that I've seen with this kind of approach in the past is that putting jobs into these communities can be seen as spam if we're talking about highly desirable talent who are bombarded with messages from everywhere. The community might be a refuge away from recruiters. I mean, how do you square that all off? How do you sort of build that trust and credibility within those spaces that you're working with, and how do you choose them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to your point, if you look at Slack on my phone, you would get dizzy for all the Slacks and Discords that I'm a member of, right? It can get a little exhausting. And a lot of times these communities do have rules of engagement that they do not like you to be selling products or having spam. I think that, again, one of the things that ultimately the communities love working with us is jobs are really valuable content. There's nothing better than helping someone land their next role, to empower themselves, to take a new directions, to financially position themselves better for themselves or their family. And so again, the communities really like working with us because we're really curated. We're really not just spraying and praying and putting every job in there. We're really using the data about what jobs based on clicks and applies are really resonating with that talent pool, get other like-minded jobs in front of those people. And so because of that trust that exists and because of the value we're bringing, a lot of these communities say when they sign up with us, I used to spend hours going on LinkedIn searching for jobs just to post in my community. So it's not only that, we're providing the jobs, but it's that curation as a service, if you will, of we're not just throwing any job in there and seeing what sticks on the wall. We're actually being really intentional about the jobs that we're sharing. And ultimately, positioning candidates to stand out more because our employers really love us as a source. They understand that we are kind of tapping into this untapped or previously unscalable way, unless you had a recruiter manually posting in all these different groups, right? We're bringing that at scale across divisions, across functions.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great example of how AI can do that, can do things at scale that were previously kind of impossible. And I think you make a great point there about relevance, and if you deliver highly relevant content to people, then that's always gonna it's always going to build that kind of trust and credibility. What does the future look like? Where do you think recruitment marketing is going? How might this kind of community approach develop?
It's a question my team and I are constantly asking. And, I think that a lot of when I explain to people what I'm doing outside of HR tech, they don't even know the concept of recruitment marketing. The idea that companies have these budgets to advertise their jobs. When you think about it, in our industry, we're very familiar with it. I think that we're seeing a lot of trends right now. There's a lot of different ways companies are trying to attract great talent. Is it the wholesale 30-day job posting? Is it cost per click, which is a race to the bottom? Is it cost per apply? Is it cost for quality apply, right? There's so many different ways that employers are trying to reach, the talent. And I think for us, the future is really about that authenticity. It is really about when we talk to candidates, the number one thing they wish they tell us is, I wish I could connect to a hiring manager. I wish I could know the secrets about, what recruiters are really caring about. I wish I could just, not just be another AI generated resume in a data bank that I'm getting filtered out. I want that human connection. And so I think it is on the employers that, despite a very interesting hiring market that we're in, to still invest in that authentic relationship of sharing, who they are as a company, what they value, why someone should work there. And again, getting their brand in front of those watering holes. It's, getting in front of these spaces that is going to pay long-term dividends for you. Even if you're not hiring right now, if you know that in the next quarter or year, these are going to be mission critical roles, it's important to kind of start those engagements and conversations.
And final question, where can people get hold of the white paper?
Yes, you can go to collabwork.com. Feel free. I'll do a comment under this LinkedIn post, this live, so that people can see it there as well. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to share a report. We have some great industry experts also participating, and really excited to kind of spend this year continuing to educate the market on the power of community.
Summer, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks, Matt.
Let's go to trending or ending. Hey, Robin, welcome back.
Here we go.
Here we go. So this is you standing in for Rhona, and we are talking about VR in the office. So this originally came from an article that was looking at what role could VR play in the boardroom, in the workplace, and it kind of really piqued my attention because VR has been on my watch list for years. So I always do these presentations about the current state of technology in recruiting and HR. I always tend to have keep an eye on it, one to watch slide, and it's always like VR, blockchain, just or more VR. And, we've been talking about it for so long. It feels like it's going nowhere. However, the the big tech companies are still pumping billions into it. So Meta, who changed their name from Facebook because of it, and then obviously the latest one that we've got is Apple. So Apple's Vision Pro, which is actually seemingly kind of aimed at more of a kind of a work orientated market than the others out there. They've kind of coined this because obviously they can't go with VR because Apple will never use the common terms. So they've kind of named it spatial computing. And just before this, I rewatched their sort of Apple Vision Pro promo video, and it looks incredible. It looks amazing, and it released last year and initially sort of sold about half the amount that they were expecting, but sales are ticking up. So it's still a thing. It's still a thing. What do you think? Is this a thing? Should we be using VR in the workplace?
I think it's one of those things that people want to so make one of those things that's why it's still one of those things. It is, the tech companies are just burning billions and billions of dollars over 2 decades here now, chasing, really, I think it's this shiny object still. It really is. I think it's innovative. No, this next iteration is gonna take off, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? It's not an all-consuming passion of mine to stay on top of VR things, but I pay attention. Who's using it, what's happening. I can tell you, I know, no one personally ever who's used it at work. When I look at those who tout it, right? Hey, here's how you can use it, what you should use it for at work.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's huge enterprises, right? It's Walmart talks about using it a lot. Bank of America is another one that talks and has it for a number of years, has had a program that they've talked about using VR for new hires, for training, that sort of thing. But then I'll go down the rabbit hole every now and again and read about it. And there's concerns from the actual employees who are doing it that I think are the things that hold it back a little bit. No one's personally, I can't stand wearing the headsets when I've just used it to play games. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine standing in a room full of my coworkers, doing it. But people, some employees have said, I get motion sickness. Yeah, we use it. I go through training, but I've got motion sickness. Or it's good conceptually. The thing is with training, especially if I'm a retail worker or something like that, right? Oh, I'm going to do active shooter drills or how to handle a robbery. Conceptually sounds great. Some people have said that is just incredibly traumatizing. I would rather be trained the old way, and there's a procedure, but without having to feel like I'm going through it to get the training. So there's those sorts of stories that surface. But we collectively, we are sure still trying to make it a thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's there's a lot to unpack there. I think from a kind of a recruitment perspective, I kind of first saw VR being used at careers fairs, particularly sort of college,
yes,
like that. And it was normally being used by the army or the air force so people could get a sense of what it's like to drive.
Yes. You're crawling through this tunnel,
and that kind of made sense because that's kind of an opt-in thing. Some people like that, some people don't. I did a podcast interview about VR probably it was before the pandemic with someone who was designing training programs for retail banking teams within it. And that seemed very positive and all of those kind of things. And I think ironically, the pandemic was probably its opportunity to really kind of leap forward. But the headsets were expensive, not really available as much as they should have been, and
Yeah.
it kind of missed the boat there. And I think that we still have these issues with the headsets. So they're still big. The Apple one looks much nicer than some of the other ones, but it has a massive power cable coming out the back of it because the power to these things. So I think there's a big affordability issue as well. It's $3,000 for this headset, and it doesn't even really do very much apart from
Yikes.
allow you to look at PowerPoint presentations as big as as big as the wall,
Right.
or whatever it is. And I think you make a great point about accessibility as well. So someone with glasses, I find them very difficult to wear. Apple kind of have this solution, which is paying more to have prescription lenses put in these things. And I think when you get to the workplace and you're sort of mandating people to do it, motion sickness, all those things is still an issue. So I think that there are big barriers to kind of overcome. I think that when it is as easy as a phone, whether it's a pair of glasses or something that just works really easily, then it could take off very, very quickly. But I think that's the thing that's still holding it back.
I mean, if we think about it, we are we're video chatting here thousands of miles away.
It's true.
Which was projected, in the 60s, whatever, the Jetsons, right? That this is how we would talk.
Yeah.
So, maybe 30 more years from now, VR will.
Exactly. You might just get there. And I think there are specialist work use cases for it. So, not just training, but things like healthcare and, training surgeons and all these kind of things. So I think it reminds me a little bit of when the iPad first came out. It didn't go down particularly well in the mass market, but it kind of went down with some very sort of specific industrial and healthcare things. So for me, I've still got it on my one to watch list, almost grudgingly, because I think if Apple hadn't sort of dived in and done this, I might have taken it off. So it's still there. But I suppose the final question is this the solution to? We have all these CEOs trying to drag employees back to the workplace, returning to the office because, working in person, apparently they make amazing connections and the magic just happens. Is this the solution to that from a remote work perspective? Putting us all in the same VR world?
No, I really don't think it is. Because look at those examples that we talked about here. Those are in-person roles, right? Yeah. So whether I'm going to be working in an industrial setting where, maybe I'm getting a little tour of something, but I don't have to do that tour on a headset. I could do that on a regular TV screen, because the in-person experience of that is also going to include it's 100 degrees and I'm standing on my feet for 8 hours. And, so there's things of that. The retail, the customer service training, the deal with an unusual angry customer situation. One thing I do know is Walmart, which has, again, been at the forefront of we're going to use this VR training, but they're doing it obviously at a place, at the store, at the local training center, however they've got it set up. And so those employees are already there together, gathered in person. And putting on these expensive headsets to stand around in a room all wearing headsets. What's wrong? Oh, I sound like I'm the old man shaking my hand at the clouds, but what's wrong with them going back to old school? You're all together anyway. Let's do some simulations, with people to people instead of all standing in a room with a headset on.
And also, big companies doing that kind of training will often hire professional actors to actually play customers, things like that, which is kind of much more realistic, I suppose. I think the barometer for this is always, when it comes to anything digital, is my son. He's my he's my kind of digital coach. So I have a VR headset, that I think I can't remember when I bought it or why I bought it, but very quickly I didn't get on with it. So he has access to it. He uses it sometimes, but to play games, obviously that's all he can really do on it. But he would still much rather play on his Xbox compared to the VR, and that's to me kind of says that there's still some way to go. So to put you on the spot, I mean, is it trending or ending? I don't know whether it's even started yet, but pick one, trending or ending.
Ending. I would say flatlining, but I can't say that. Ending.
Yeah, and I'm going to cheat because hey, it's my show. I'm going to say it's still on my watch list. It is neither trending.
You could use my flatlining line.
Yeah, flatlining is perfect. I keep thinking it's going to end, but people keep spending these tech companies keep spending money on it. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And like any of these technologies, I remember belittling QR codes as the most ridiculous thing ever invented for marketing, and I now use QR codes every single day. So you just never know quite how things are going to turn out. So Robin, thank you very much for filling in for Rhona, and it's been great talking to you.
It has been. Thank you.
Okay. So we are at the end of another show. Lots of fantastic content coming up on Purple Acorn. Basically every weekday there is something on. So tomorrow is the HR morning show. On Wednesday there's Hire Her, which is a talent collective podcast. My First Job with Mike Wood on Thursdays, and From the Desk of Jada Montemurano on Fridays. So lots of stuff. Check out purpleacornnetwork.com or the LinkedIn page to find out more. A big thank you to Jocelyn, to Robin, and to our amazing producers, Ben and Melinda. You can check out my longer form interviews on Recruiting Future, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, also search and subscribe to the Alder Hour as well, because this is available as a podcast. We will be back this time next Monday, unless you live in the UK, where because the clocks spring forward, we'll be on an hour later. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.